Listen, who's going to win out of George Groves and Carl Froch then?
Well, again, that's another interesting fight.
Come on.
Say that's my. Well, you have to go with Carl Froch. I mean, you know, and at the end of the day, this is, I believe, a fight that's very, very interesting and a lot closer than some people think. I think George Groves can win the fight. If you said to me,
I agree with you.
You're saying to me, who's going to win the fight? If you ask me that and you put a gun to my head, then I choose Carl Froch, because I look at the markets and I look at the odds, and that shows you the answer to the question.
And you look at the experience, and you look at what he's been through.
I will say, George Groves, and I felt this all along, has got things that trouble Carl Froch: speed, movement, and you know. And I tell you what, George Groves has also got a hell of a lot of belief, and he believes categorically that he will beat Carl Froch on that night, and he's not bluffing himself. You know, he's not drilled it home that he's got to believe it. He honestly believes it, and you know, and I always say that, you know, when you're involved with two fighters going in, honestly, may the best man win that fight.
Well, he's on the line, Eddie.
He didn't give me that warning.
No, well, exactly. I'm just... I know, I stitched you up a little bit there. George Groves is on the line. George Groves is facing Carl Froch, who really has become the standard bearer for British boxing over the last 2 years. He's gone away from home. You know this. You've been promoting him for a year and a half, haven't you? He's gone away from home. He'll fight anyone, and he's taking on what he considers to be a young whippersnapper. I don't want to describe you quite in that way, George, but he considers you that way. George is there. This is the fight of his life. How excited are you about this fight on November the 23rd, George? And good evening to you.
And good evening, yeah. How you doing? Yeah, of course, yeah. I'm very, very excited. It's my chance. It's my chance to step up on the biggest stage in British boxing and arrive. And obviously, you don't get too many chances, so I'm going to make it count.
You know that Carl can be wound up as well. You've been playing some great games on Twitter and YouTube and putting these videos out. Is that you sitting at home kind of playing your mind games with him?
I'm generally not that clever to edit together a video like that, but I stumbled across it and it did make me giggle, so I thought it's worth a share. You know, Carl, for all he's achieved, has a superiority complex, and he sees himself a level above everyone else and a level above what he actually is and what he actually has achieved and what he actually has been through. Sometimes it'll work for him. This time it's going to work against him. He needs to somehow comprehend that I'm here. I am justifiably here. I am a worthy opposition for him, and I'm also going to bash him up, embarrass him and take his belts. So at some point that will dawn on him, and that's when anxiety will set in for him.
All right, I'll step in the middle here. So Carl Froch, Eddie, superiority complex, and I do agree with George. He is rightfully in the world's, you know, in the governing bodies and the sanctioning bodies, he's very highly ranked, isn't he? Yeah,
I mean, he's as rightful as anyone for the shot. And, you know, I think that I thought the video was hilarious.
I know, I was with you when you were looking at it.
It was very, very funny. You couldn't help but laugh at it. You know, and I think it's a fascinating fight. I think there are levels, and George knows, I think, deep down, that he hasn't been at the level of Carl Froch before.
Yet.
I think, you know, and now he will be, and now it's his chance. Like I said, I mean, I was obviously involved with the negotiations for this fight. George had a lot of options on the table for this fight. So did Carl Froch. But one thing stood out: neither was going to back down for a fight. And I know how much George Groves wanted this fight, and I know how much he believes he can win this fight, because amongst all the other options that were there, you know, Castanov for the WBA title, Sakio Bika for the WBC title, Froch was the one that George Groves wanted. And now he's got his chance and he's got his shot. And, you know, I'm sure he's got his opinions of where Carl is in the rankings, but one thing stands out is George hasn't operated at his level, and now we're going to find out if he's good enough. And that's the fascinating thing about this fight, because if he is good enough, then he's going to go on to be a huge, huge superstar in the sport. Because like you said, right now, like it or not, Froch is the flag bearer of British boxing. You know, he's the star man. And we saw the ticket sold out in 11 minutes. You know, this is a true, huge domestic super middleweight title fight that people love. You know, it's
what I love about this, and I want George's opinion on this, George. When you look at it, technically, in the ring, George may end up the better boxer.
Yeah.
Can I ask George that?
No, not really. I'll answer it first. No, go on. Go on, George.
Do you feel technically, George, that you're the better boxer?
Yeah, of course, because technically Carl Froch is at best limited. He's certainly not world class when it comes to technical boxing, and he's actually regressed throughout his career, and he sort of got this hard man image, and he plays up to it, and it'll work, as I say, with certain opponents, and with certain opponents we've seen him fall well short. Is he going to be able to change his spots at his age, or is he going to be able to implement his only form of fighting?
But he does have a granite chin, and he's able to fall back on that all the time, though, isn't he?
Well, you do have a granite chin, but fighters with granite chins still get beat, still get stopped, still get dropped. We've seen Carl hit the deck before. We've seen him buzz before. He's not the sort of fighter who has a granite chin but also rides a shot. He loves to take a shot full-blooded and full pelt. And again, if you're landing clean, hard, accurate, powerful shots consistently from the start to the finish, I genuinely don't think there's many fighters out there that can sort of soak that up for 12 rounds if they ain't having no success themselves.
Can you just clarify one thing and what difference is it making to this camp? That obviously you've switched from Adam Booth to Paddy Fitzpatrick. What was the reason for that move, and what difference is it making in preparation for this fight with Carl?
It made no difference whatsoever in the preparations and for the way I'll approach this fight, and for when I eventually beat Carl Froch on November 23rd. I mean, Eddie knows the situation. He got a phone call from Adam. He spoke to Adam more recently than I have, so I'm sure he'll be able to elaborate better than I can. But it's just one of them things. It's a relationship that I had with Adam that is now over. I'm working with a very good coach now in Paddy Fitzpatrick, and we're 100% on our way and ready to rock.
Are you suggesting there was a fallout there then, or it was just time for the relationship to be over?
I'd rather not say, to be honest.
Okay.
There's some stuff that needs to be sorted out still, but it's over. So that's really the only thing that's important at this moment in time.
Do you really feel, from what you're saying tonight, and I have been following, obviously, what you've been saying, your kind of incredible and unshakable self-belief going into this, which you need, obviously. There seems to be, between the lines, you're feeling that Froch might not be taking you as seriously as he ought to, because he's underestimating the level that you're already at.
I think that Froch will approach this fight like he does a lot of fights. He'll get himself in physically as great a nick as he can, and then he'll have to battle his own mental demons in the process. Sometimes when he's fighting a fighter who, in his mind, he sees as justifiable to lose to, like an Andre Ward, he talks up that defeat more so than any other fighter who's ever been beat before, because he sees him at that level. He talks up Mikhail Kessler and talks about another third rematch, and we've seen that fight twice already. When it comes down to me, you can't comprehend that I am now ready to fight at his level. I haven't boxed at that level yet, so I can't say that I'm ready, but I know I'm ready, and everyone will see that on November 23rd. So he's got to have to battle the fact that, there's this kid who he can't understand gets a shot to fight him, who is this international superstar, as he describes himself. And not only is this guy a no one, he's here, he's talking, people are saying that he's going to beat me, fans are against him. He's got all this to deal with, and for his fragile mental state, that's a lot to contend with. He's never actually boxed a fellow Brit in a big fight. That's something I have done. That's something I had to fight James DeGale, who emotionally will always be probably my biggest fight, because there was a personal history there. I have mutual friends. There was a lot of
It was also a horrible
outside of
build-up, but
boxing.
it was a horrible build-up as well, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It
it was a horrible
horrible.
build-up. It was fascinating, and I did it, after 10 fights. So it came very early on in my career. I didn't have a lot of time to gain experience from that. And obviously, DeGale went through the same thing at an early stage in his career as well. But that's vital experience that I'm going to take into this fight.
George, so
he already is not dealing with. At the press conference, he couldn't even look at me. He refused to shake my hand. He was biting the inside of his mouth. I've never seen anyone look so anxious, and it's only going to get worse. The closer this fight comes around, the worse it's going to get for him.
George, quick prediction on how you're going to beat how you're going to beat Carl Froch then?
I'm going to put him to sleep like I do every other fighter. I'm going to make him miss and make him pay from the start. I'm going to impose my physical strength, which he'll be shocked at. I'm going to impose my ring generalship, as I always do. My boxing ability, my accuracy, my speed, and then my punch power. And then he's going to have to take a lot of clean shots to make it to that final bell.
George, thank you very much for joining us. Can't wait for this fight. Cannot wait for this fight. George Groves, very confident. We were just listening to him a minute ago. He's fighting your guy, Carl Froch. Manchester, isn't it?
23rd.
The Phones for You Arena. It changed his name. The Phones for You Arena, November the 23rd. Massive night. Sold out. Was it 16,500 tickets? Is it? So 18,000?
19.
11 minutes. He's very confident. He's talking a great game. He's a very powerful fighter. We've seen his power come in the last year. He really believes he can go in there and destroy your guy.
And so do a lot of people. I mean, you talk to people in the know, and they actually back Groves to win this fight. Like I said, I believe he can win the fight. I think a lot. I can't agree with everything he says. I think Carl Froch is actually he's a technically underrated fighter. I think people think that he brawls, he makes mistakes, he misses a lot, but I also think that he's got a very clever brain. I think he's got a great jab. You see against Kessler, he outboxed him for 4 or 5 rounds in the opening, spell of that fight. But Groves has got a great jab. He's very fast. You're right. He carries power in both hands.
He's slightly vulnerable to the punch sometimes. I could see this fight, Eddie. I think it's going to be a cracker. It's absolute cracker. The hairs are going to be standing up on so many necks because, there's nothing like 2 British guys who are at world level fighting each other on a big night in Manchester or at the O2 Arena in London. It's phenomenal to be there. You thought I was going to swear then, didn't you? It was phenomenal to be there. For me, I could even see... I might have said this before on air on the show. I could see Groves being ahead in the fight, technically on points, kind of in the first 6-7 rounds, and then Carl catching up with him, because I think... what George has shown is a vulnerability at times when he attacks, and I could see
he's got to control the red mist. I mean, he'll definitely have his tactics, which I don't think is going to be the greatest shock to people. That is going to be to use his speed and frustrate Froch and outbox him. But at times he's going to have to stand there and trade, and I think that's when we're going to find out about these so-called vulnerabilities that people talk about. I know he's been down against Anderson. He didn't really get hurt against DeGale, but, he talks about the DeGale fight. No disrespect to James DeGale. You're talking about a totally different animal in Carl Froch than James DeGale. But, I do think, you are right. I think he can outscore Froch. He can outpoint him. And like you said, and he's right in what he says. Froch doesn't tend to ride shots. He tends to take him full-blown on the chin, and Groves can whack. And I know that Froch has got a great chin, but it's not something you want to just rely on at all times. It's great to have and to have it in the locker, but there are going to be times in this fight that they're going to stand and trade, and that for me, that's going to how George responds to that and how he responds to being hit is going to be, for me, the telling point of how this fight goes. Fascinating stuff. And what is that? Is that pay-per-view on Sky, or is it really pay-per-view? So Froch has really brought pay-per-view back on Sky, hasn't he? Well, listen, they took a chance with Froch Kessler, and it wasn't much of a chance because they knew what a great fight it would be. But the undercard already building up, world title fight, Scott Quigg on the card, big British fights as well. So it's going to be a great night.